Well, I am really excited. In a few weeks, we're going to be beginning a series on prayer. And I'm really excited about it, really more than anything, because God's showing me some really cool things about the significance of prayer. Like, I know prayer is important, and some of you guys are like, oh, okay, I've heard all the sermons about prayer. But listen, there is room for growth in my life, if I'm going to be honest. There's room for growth in that area, and I know that prayer is our communication with God, and I want to improve that. In the same way, Beth and I, we're great, but I want to learn how to even grow in my communication with my wife, right? And so, same way with God. Like, I'm looking forward to it. We're going to have a really, really good time. But before we get there, I just thought, before we're gonna take a couple weeks to lay some foundation, because in order to even begin to address prayer, there's something that I believe is very, very significant that goes into that, and that is faith. We're going to talk for the next couple of weeks about faith, moving mountains. Man, there's one of the greatest reprimands of Jesus to his disciples throughout his reprimand's a strong word. It was kind of reprimand. To Jesus to the disciples was like, oh, you have little faith. And I look at the lives that they lived, and yeah, sometimes they were pretty thick-headed, but a lot of times I'm like, man, they're like doing miracles and stuff. They're like walking with Jesus and wow. Like, if they had little faith, I know that I have a long ways to go. Anybody else feel that sometimes? And so we're gonna take a kind of a two-parter. Today we're gonna talk about faith that saves, and then next week we're gonna move into the next part, and we're gonna talk about faith that moves. And but we're just gonna lay some foundation here, because before we jump into prayer, let's make sure that our foundation is solid, right? All right. So, okay, in my preparation for this week, I started in the most spiritual of all places, Google. And so I Google searched faith, and here's what I came up with. Here's what I found. Here's the first definition it gave. Faith is complete trust or confidence in something or someone or something. Complete trust or confidence in someone or something. That seems like a really good definition. In fact, it reminds me of how the Bible defines it. Like, it really is a good definition. When in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, it says faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we don't see, right? Like, there's some, right? But then it gives a second definition. Thank you, Google, for the second definition. It says this: strong belief in God or in the doctrines of a religion based on spiritual apprehension rather than proof. And I'm like, why do we need a second definition? Wasn't the first definition good enough? Here's what I've come to realize, is that we need that second definition to define faith a little bit differently, and even the culture defining faith a little bit differently, because our faith in God has somehow shifted from we hang it on a sign in the lobby. Authentic faith has turned into something other than that needs kind of a slightly different definition. I want to get back to even Google's first definition, the one that resonates with Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1. Like, I don't need the spiritual doctrines of religion. I don't need that. I want to come back to, what does it mean to live with such faith that I have absolute, complete trust and confidence in someone or something? I just want to know who the object of my someone and something is. If I know the object of my someone and something, that should take care of a lot of it. But here's the problem. Faith, in a lot of ways that we use it, is not really faith at all. And it's not a new phenomenon, right? It's not just a cultural thing. I can hear it right now. Our culture is going to hell, and we've digressed. No. They were dealing with this 2,000 years ago. In fact, I want to start off. We're going to talk today about a faith that saves. But in order to be able to distinguish a faith that saves, I think it's really, really helpful to see what kind of faith doesn't save. Now, some of you might even think like there's faith that doesn't save. There is. In fact, just so you don't think I'm just like making something up, I'm going to use 3 different biblical examples where Jesus and the biblical authors are explaining and describing a faith, a form of faith that doesn't save. These aren't the only 3, but they're the 3 I picked. I want us to first look at Matthew chapter 22, verse 1 through 14. There's a story in there. It's a parable. We're going to look at a faith that responds. Matthew 22, verses 1 through 14. Basically, this parable, Jesus is telling you the story, and there's a king who has a son, and he gets married, and he's throwing this big wedding banquet. Hold that one. Let's go back one. Oh, we got to build up to it. Okay, we got to build up to that. We can't. No spoilers. There's a king that threw a wedding banquet for his son, and invited guests didn't come. He goes out, there's specific guests, and I want you to come to this big wedding banquet, this big feast. It's going to be a great time. And person after person, like, nah, I'm too busy. No, I'm not going to come. No, it's not worth my time. And then some, like as the king sent messengers, hey, go tell those people to come. They're on the guest list. Go tell them. Then they assaulted the messengers and said, get lost. And nobody came to the wedding banquet. And the king's all upset, and he's like, what are we going to do? So this is what he does. Then he sends his messengers. And says, go just invite anybody who wants to come. Okay? If the people on the guest list aren't going to show up, then invite anyone and everyone who wants to come. Now, here's verse 10. It says, so the servants went out into the streets and gathered all they could find, the bad as well as the good, and the wedding hall was filled with guests, the bad and the good. Notice that. He invited everybody. Everybody's invited. And apparently, in this story, everybody came. Everybody shows up. All these people show up, the bad people, the good people. The whole hall was filled, okay? However, the king sees this one guy. The king comes into the banquet, and he sees this one guy, and he's not wearing wedding clothes. And so what does he do? He kicks him out. He's like, dude, how'd you get in here? Everybody was all coming in, so I just came in. He's like, but why aren't you wearing wedding clothes? How did you get in without wedding clothes? And so this is what Jesus says. Look at verse 13. It says, tie him hand and foot and throw him outside into the darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Yo, that got intense fast, right? Like, we got a wedding crasher, and he gets thrown into the darkness with weeping and gnashing of teeth, tied hand and foot. That seems really intense. And I believe the reason that Jesus uses such intense language is because he was signaling this isn't about a banquet. This is about eternity. He was signaling this isn't just about a dinner party. This is about all of eternity. What Jesus was saying, and the point of this imagery here, is that everyone is invited, but we have to put on Christ in order to make it to the table. You see, this guy, he had faith to respond to the invitation, but not a faith that saves. He had faith to respond to the invitation, but not a faith that saves. He shows up. He's like, what? Wait, I had to change? I didn't know how to change. I think some of us, we respond to the invitation the same way. Wait, well, I have to change? Now listen. You don't have to change to come to Jesus. Here's how I believe this story goes down. They didn't have to put on wedding clothes to get in. Jesus is a come as you are kind of God. You just had to show up. They had wedding clothes for you. In fact, you can't afford the kind of wedding clothes that you need to get into this party. Come as you are. And here, if you want in, put this on. You know what's interesting to me? The people that have the most issue with this are rich people. And that's not just my opinion, that's Jesus' opinion. He actually said it's hard, really hard for rich people to get to heaven. And here's why. Because when I'm rich, I like the way I'm dressed. Even if I don't like it, I chose it. I chose to look this way. And Jesus says, hey, come, look, all you got to do is put on Christ. I mean, you can't put it over your clothes. You got to take off your old self to put on Christ to have a seat at the table. See, but when you're like wearing rags, when you have one pair of clothes and it's dirty and holy and you can't afford anything else, you are welcoming the upgrade, right? And I think that's why Jesus was constantly surrounded by the poor and the socially marginalized, because they're like, he sees me. He's got something new and fresh for me. He's going to treat me like a prince. Come on. Yeah, you can have my old stuff. Come on, give me Jesus. And Jesus says, but here's the problem with people who are rich with money, rich with power, rich with control, rich with opportunity, is we come to the banquet, but we like the way we're dressed. We come to the banquet and we say, hey, I appreciate the offer, but I'm good, I'll have a seat. I have faith to respond to the invitation, but I don't have the kind of faith that says I'm going to leave my old life and put on Christ fully and walk in who he is. And he had faith to show up. He had faith to respond. But friends, it doesn't sound like he had faith to make it into eternity with Jesus. Now, it didn't sound like. It was very, very clear. That's kind of scary. That we can respond to the invitation. We can raise our hand and come down for an altar call. And we come as we are. But Jesus says, I have something better than as you are. I've got a set of clothing that can't touch what you're bringing to the table right now. I've got a life beyond what you can imagine. But what we see, I mean, Romans 13, 14, like it reiterates this. Clothe yourself with the Lord Jesus Christ, and do not think about how to gratify the desires of the flesh. That's real spiritual language to say, to live like you used to. I mean, that's how we all lived, right? We just did what makes us feel good. That's what the culture tells us to do. But Paul's saying, no. Getting saved. A faith that saves requires that we come to him open-handed. I'm not holding on to my stuff. I'm not holding on to my control. I'm not holding on to my power. I'm not holding on to my opportunity. I'm not holding on to my future. I'm not holding on to my past. I'm coming, and Jesus Christ, you clothe me, and everything else will stay there. I'm yours from here on out. And this Jesus telling the story says, listen, if you don't come and clothe yourself with Christ, if you want to keep what you had and add Jesus to your lifestyle, like I'm gonna dress like I am. I'll just wear the cross, right? I'll just wear the little cross, add a little bling to my outfit, and now we're gonna go have a banquet. It's like that's not how it works. We see a faith to respond, but it's not a faith that saves. We see it kind of fleshed out in another way, like James chapter 2. James is actually the brother of Jesus. James shows us a faith that identifies but doesn't save. James chapter 2, 14, what good is it, my brothers, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? He has this question, can that faith save him? That's a rhetorical question, and the very obvious, any biblical scholar or reader should be able to come to the conclusion, the rhetorical answer is no. What good is it? It's no good. If someone says they have faith, but does not have works, can that faith save him? No. This person has faith to identify as a Christian. So not only am I going to respond to the invitation, now I'll respond to the invitation and I'll wear the Christian badge, right? I will identify with this group of people. I'm a Christian because of the community that I'm in. And we see this a lot, actually. Like God invites us into family and into community, and we're constantly, hey, come on, be a part of this followers of Jesus community that we're a part of. We love the community aspect of it. But if we come to Jesus simply to get community out of it, we're missing, and we miss Jesus altogether. And this is the guy that says, like, hey, I'm a Christian. I identify as Christian. Yeah, but are you one? And here's the common mistake of somebody that kind of identifies as Christian, but doesn't actually live it out, doesn't have faith to back up, like works, like you can't actually see this kind of faith. This is the one that says, okay, it's rational reasoning, right? Salvation is by faith. That's what the Bible teaches. Faith is essentially belief. I believe that Jesus is God, therefore I'm saved. That sounds like rational logic, doesn't it? Saved by faith. Faith is essentially belief. I believe that Jesus is God, therefore I am saved. But here's where this breaks down. Is when we assume that faith and belief are the same thing. It's not. When we do that, we reduce faith into an intellectual pursuit. We've all met people like that. Maybe some of us are kind of on that pursuit ourselves. But if I can believe all the right things, if I can figure out all the right things, and I'm not saying faith is just like this blind thing, just believe nothing, believe it just because. No, our faith is rooted in the reality of God, in the way that he created our universe. So we don't have to just like close our eyes and hope. But faith is more than just belief. James, just a few verses later, he says this: you believe that there is one God, good. Even the demons believe that and shudder. Think about it. Are the demons have saving faith? No, obviously not. Like they're currently actively working against everything that God is working towards. They're currently trying to steal, kill, and destroy everything that God has ever done in your life or ever will do. Like the demonic world, the enemy of your soul is working against you. No, they don't have saving faith, but yes, they 100% believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Which leaves us with this one conclusion: there's more to faith than believing right things about Jesus. Belief is about what you accept as truth, right? The demons accept as truth the fact that Jesus is the Son of God. It's as real and obvious to them as if I were to say, I am in this room. I'm not outside, I am inside. That is evident. It is obvious. When the demons see Jesus, yeah, they're the Son of God. But look what show up when Jesus doing his ministry, a demon-possessed person comes up, and they're terrified of him. They know who he is. They know his power. But faith is about where you place your trust. They believe that Jesus is the Son of God, but their trust has not been placed in him. So James is hitting on this faith that identifies as Christian, but that does not save. Is a faith that is just intellectual belief. It's a faith that, like, I'm just going to be a part of this faith community, and I'm going to be good. Like, you're missing something. Is it belief, intellectual, or is it faith? Are you actually placing your trust in what you claim you believe? If you do, there will be certain things about your life that are different. Not exclusive, but here's a list of 3 things that James just mentioned in the previous chapter. He says that real religion is keeping a tight rein on your tongue. It's taking care of the vulnerable. It's keeping yourself from being influenced by the world. If your faith, like if you're like, I'm a person of faith and I identify as a Christian, but like your mouth is loose and out of control, you think only of yourself, and your lifestyle looks more like the world than it looks like Jesus, then you probably have to do some heart checking. Because it's like James is like, this is what my brother did. This is what he taught. This is what he was like. Let me tell you what Jesus was like. Here's some things that he really valued. If you're really following Jesus, your life will look like this. You can't say I'm following Jesus and then not do anything that he did. That's not following. That's just believing. And here's the third one. And then I promise we're going to be done with the negative stuff. We'll go on to something good, okay? Some of you are like, man, this guy's mean today. All right. Don't preach here for a while and I come back fire and brimstone. Watch out. The third one is faith that performs. Okay, so we get this, right? James is like, all right, your faith is not real if it doesn't have if there's no evidence of it, if nothing happened. So then I'm like, all right, let's go do some Christian stuff, right? Let's go. Like, I believe it. Now let's get all Christian-y up in here, okay? But then I read, I would say, maybe the most intimidating verse of Scripture in the entire Bible. Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 through 23. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who's in heaven. All right, we're going to do all those good things. We're going to take care of children and old people, and we're going to be awesome. And then look what he says in the next verse. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not? Like you saw, these are things we did. Did we not prophesy in your name? And in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles. Did we not perform for you? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. All right, anybody feeling hopeless yet? Like, what are we supposed to do with this? So James is like, hey, your faith is dead because it doesn't have any works. And then Jesus is like, hey, just because you do all the works doesn't mean your faith is alive. So where do we go from here? They had faith to perform, but they still didn't have a faith that saves. If calling on the name of Jesus and prophesying in his name and driving out demons and performing miracles isn't enough, then there's a part of you that's just like, let's just go home. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to make it. Right? I don't have any more than that. All right, so look at these three things. Let's. I believe there's some hope in this, okay? We look at these three different types of faith. Faith that responds to invitation, faith that identifies as Christian, faith that performs all the right spiritual activities. None of them, in each of these cases, none of them is a faith that saves. So here's the hope. I believe that the reason that none of these kinds of faith can save is because it lacks all three of them lack a very essential element. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 and 9 says this, for it is by grace. It is by grace you have been saved through faith. And this is not from yourself, it is a gift of God. He goes on to say, not by works so that nobody can boast. You can't brag about this thing. This is not you. This is a common theme in Paul's writings to the churches, where he pairs grace and faith together. And unless we try to make it into some kind of formula, he flip-flops, in Ephesians, he says, by grace through faith. And then in Acts 15, in the Council of Jerusalem, he says it's by faith through the grace of our Lord Jesus, we are saved, right? So regardless of what prepositions you use to describe it, by faith, through faith, by grace, doesn't matter. This is what matters. These two elements have to be in place if it is going to be a saving faith. Faith and grace. Faith and grace. We said at the beginning, faith is the confidence in what we hope for and the assurance of what we do not see. Google said it is the complete trust or confidence in someone or something. You see, in these three examples, you have somebody who has faith, but they're going to show up on their own terms. Their faith in, I'm good enough as I am. The next person is somebody who has faith that being a part of a community is going to be good enough. That if I can just blend in, if I can just believe the right things, then I'm going to be good enough. The last one is I've got faith in my ability to perform. I've got faith in my ability to pray, and I can worship just right. And I can feel the music, and I know the right times to raise my hands to really feel spiritual. I know how to lead a Bible study and read my Bible. I know how to help other people and look out for others. But it's a faith in my own ability. The reason that these kinds of faith are not faith that saves is because faith that saves is rooted in grace. You know, Paul describes salvation in 2 Corinthians chapter 5. He describes salvation and maybe my favorite way in the entire Bible that it's described. And that is in the imagery of reconciling relationships. Because what salvation is really all about is that there's been a rift. There's been a break in relationship between God and his creation, us. And salvation is in just such a simple form is just the reconciliation in that relationship. But as in any relationship, reconciliation takes two parts, doesn't it? Reconciliation takes two parts. Faith is my part. And honestly, faith is something that will be acknowledged by nearly all the religions of the world. It is my part that I play in my own salvation. And the thing that differentiates our faith, a saving faith, from all the other religions of the world is that it all is dependent on me and my faith. But we have this beautiful thing in our relationship with Jesus. Is that Jesus did all of the heavy lifting. Jesus already completed the work that is necessary to reconcile us. I don't have to do any of the work anymore. In fact, my faith is not in my ability to work enough to get to God. My faith is in that He's already done it. You know, someone is swinging so far the other side that it's just grace. Everybody's going to heaven. Jesus is a God of grace, and it doesn't really matter how you get there. We're all going to make it. Jesus has said it is finished. The work has been done, but we've got to receive that gift. Jesus said, hey, come to me, but if we don't come, we can't be reconciled. There's a faith element that is real. That's our role. But the grace element is simply acknowledging that Jesus has already said and declared it is finished. The grace that we have faith in is, and here's something I believe that is super, super significant when it comes to understanding our relationship with God and the salvation that He offers. For some of us, we view grace as God looking the other way at our wrongs. I have faith that God is going to dismiss my shortcomings, that God is going to look the other way when I sin, and He's still going to bring me up on His lap and give me a big hug. Now, He will, but it's not because He looked the other way. It's because He already paid the punishment for the crime that I committed. My faith is not in a God that's soft. My faith is in a God who is just, and He already justly dealt with my sin on the cross. When Jesus hung on the cross, bled and died, He did it to pay the punishment that I deserved. And it's easy to be like, I don't deserve that. Come on, I haven't done anything that bad. Every time we choose me instead of Him, it is rebellion against His kingdom. It's treason. And yeah, we do deserve separation from Him for eternity. And yet Jesus, because of what He did, said, I got you. Saving faith isn't about identifying with the right people. A saving faith isn't about being good enough and dressing good enough to earn your spot at the table. A saving faith isn't about checking all the boxes to make sure I've earned a high approval and maybe my good will outweigh my bad. Hey, God, didn't you see when I said, I never knew you? How do you say that? Because you never received his grace. He died. He offered his life for you and me. He said, anybody who will, come. Whoever calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. He said, like anybody can come. Everybody's invited, but you have to have faith, not in your ability to have a seat, but in his ability to pave the way for it. When you look at all these aspects of faith and kinds of faith that don't save, it can leave you feeling overwhelmed, like, am I ever going to be good enough? And I hope, like, listen, I don't think you can ever get saved without ever coming to that point. Because you have to get there and go, oh wait, no, I can't be. I'm never gonna do it. I don't have what it takes. I can't get there on my own. This is why the rich struggle and the poor, Jesus said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Because I recognize that, God, I can never be what I need to be. God, I made my choice so many times to reject you, to rebel against you, to do my own thing, to live my own way, and yet you still died for me. You still took the punishment for my sin, and you still invite me to your table. So faith that saves, listen, Google got it right on the first try, is complete trust and confidence in someone, Jesus, or something, his grace, and the work of grace upon the cross. James was also right. If you can't tell by the way I live, if you can't see that I put on Jesus this morning, is it faith at all? But the reality is, the first step is, hey, will you take a seat at the table? You know, I just not pointing fingers, but in a room this size, I'd imagine there's probably some of you who your faith kind of resembles the one who showed up on his own terms. I mean, your heart's in the right place. But you're not ready to let go of what you came in with. Like, I know Jesus died on the cross. I know I need to put on Christ. You can't put on Christ while still wearing all the baggage of your past life. Jesus says, come as you are. But he never wants us to leave as we are. Because however you came in, rich or poor, good times or bad, however you came in, remember the story of the banquet. Like, bad people, I love it just how simple and childlike language it uses. The bad and the good. The bad and the good, that wasn't the distinguishing factor of who got to have a seat at the table. Bad people sat at the table when they put on Christ. And this good guy was dismissed because he wouldn't. Maybe you've come to Jesus. You've responded to the invitation. But truthfully, you've never put on Christ. You've never let your past life go so that you could fully embrace all that Christ has for you today. Friends, he says, come as you are, but he's got something so much better for you today. You know, there's probably somebody else that for you, faith is about the community. And if I can be a part of this community, and if I can kind of like follow along and learn the right things that I'm supposed to believe to be a part of this community, then like that's really what I'm after. That's what faith is about, is belonging to a community. Belonging to a community is beautiful. And God adopts you into his family, and it's unlike anything you could ever imagine. But if you come for the community and miss Jesus, you've missed the whole thing. And then there's some of us. Maybe once upon a time, we came with a pure heart and pure motive. Maybe once upon a time, we threw off our clothes and we put on Christ and we sat down at the table. And as a part of the family and as a part of the banquet, we got up and started to serve one another. And now we've been serving for so long that we forgot that Jesus wants us at the table. We've just been too busy serving. Your faith is no longer your own. You put on Christ, but now those clothes you put on so long ago just looks like an apron to serve. Listen, Jesus doesn't need you to serve him, but he desires you to have a seat at the table with him. Some of us, we've wandered from the purity of our saving faith because we've made it about all the things we have to do. Our quiet times with Jesus have been a checklist. They've lost their luster. Friends, it's not because I'm doing it wrong, which is usually what somebody who's work-driven thinks. It's because you forgot. He just wants to be with you. You forgot that it's about reconciliation with a God who loves you and made you. You forgot that you have a heavenly Father who just wants to spend time with you. Sit back and enjoy the banquet. Before we can talk about a faith that moves mountains, let's make sure that the faith that we declare is a faith that saves. Listen, this life is too short to mess around with faith games. If I'm going to do this, let's do it right. This is about him. It's about the work he's already done. It's about the work that was finished. So this morning, as we close in prayer, would you just do a kind of a deep heart check? Could you do a motives evaluation? For those of you who claim faith, what's your faith rooted in? Your works? A certain community? Or is your faith grounded in the grace of Jesus extended to you and me? For others, maybe you just need to, for the very first time, say, God, I'm choosing a relationship with you. I'm choosing to let go of my life and follow you fully. God, I'm all in. He says, come, my child, have a seat. And you'll never be the same.